One of the first moments where Du Bois comes onto the national stage is the brewing controversy between his ideas about racial progress and how to move the race forward, and the leading African-American figure of that time period, the late 19th and early 20th century, Booker T. Washington. In the beginning, they agreed on many points about the importance of education and moving the race forward. It turns out, though, that because Du Bois was northern born and had access to some of the best schools in New England and really was encouraged to think broadly, spent part of his elite graduate education being trained in Berlin, working with Max Weber. By contrast to Booker T. Washington, who was self-educated, a very gifted and talented man, but he was born as a slave. That fundamental difference certainly shaped their sense of change over time. The life that Booker T. Washington eventually led as the leading, most recognized figure of African American society meant that his expectations for what the white race was willing to do on behalf of black people were very different than of Du Bois. You could say Du Bois was a utopian idealist in some respects, and Booker T. Washington was a pragmatist, better known as an accommodationist. And so it set up an ongoing debate. Eventually, Booker T. Washington's program sustained the ethos of Jim Crow America because it was about black people working, but on white people's terms. It was about a lack of political enfranchisement because black people were subject to poll taxes and literacy tests and the inability to vote. And it was ultimately about a form of second-class citizenship that was segregated America. In this regard, Du Bois did see that real change, fundamental change, living up to the real promises of racial democracy in America, depended upon agitation, depended upon a grasp for power.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I guess you're wondering why we're going over Du Bois, but I just came from a play, The Most Dangerous Man in America, W.E.B. Du Bois, down at 42nd Street by Ted Wilson and Woody King. We're going to play a little piece about it later on, but you interviewed the lead for Du Bois last week or the week before?
Right, exactly, and that was an interesting interview that we did for Books That Matter, People Who Matter.
Right, right.
And he explained how he went from journalism into acting, and it really wasn't.
He was a journalist.
Well, he was WABC TV.
Okay.
Art.
I didn't know that.
He was a local. He was one of those. You know, when you looked at him on TV, he's had that great deep voice which he has.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were always comforted when you saw a black newscaster because there weren't that many. You had Gil Noble, you had John Johnson, you had Art. The bottom line, he really wasn't a transition from journalism into acting. It was a desire of his to always be an actor. And then Woody King called him up after, of course, he's retired from WABC TV and asked him, or told him that he wanted him to play the role of W.B. Du Bois, and he said he was just awestruck by that. His research into Du Bois revealed for him a lot of information that otherwise would not have been enjoyed by him, which happens to black people when they are in professions and then they, for some reason or another, like Paul on the proverbial horse going after the Christians, he or she comes into some information that they feel that they should have known a long time ago based on their education.
Right.
And it becomes a
obsession,
outstanding moment for them, and I will expect for him to keep pursuing black history, but black history, not that he didn't know, but keep pursuing the vein of W.B. Du Bois, Booker T, Paul Robeson, and the like. Myself, personally, when I was in high school, in Catholic high school, I was a staunch anti-communist.
Okay.
So Du Bois and Paul Robeson and others were classified as communists, and I wouldn't have anything, you know, black, whatever complexion they were, have nothing to do with them. And it wasn't until after college that I came into a body of knowledge, and actually the first body of knowledge is that J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, their focus of the FBI was not getting Dillinger and the rest of these guys in the mob, as you would see on TV, but their primary focus was communists and blacks. That's the role, the traditional role of the FBI, based on the reading that I was privy to.
We might mention that this is the McCarthy era,
Right.
so you know, anti-communism was a big deal back in those days, because we were dealing with the Russians, and after World War II and all this stuff with the Russians, they were something to fear, because they were really
You know,
a bunch of
it was
people.
also, you know, talking about J. Edgar Hoover, he had violated federal law more than anybody in the history of the United States. That was part of his daily routine. And in that package of the anti-communist movement, it's interesting because the first church I was a member of back in the early 50s, the church broke up because there were allegations that the pastor himself was a communist. So the furor that was going on in the early 50s, the insanity, when Paul Robeson left the country, you know, it was Ozzie and Ruby that helped sustain him overseas.
Right.
You know, they helped Paul stay alive. And they did that over and against the McCarthy doctrine, McCarthy and all that insanity of the anti-communism.
We might explain why socialism, which is communism, is so attractive to most black people, because as Booker T was saying, that we need to train our blacks and we need to share the wealth. So this is like, we should have socialized medicine today. There's something to communism if you think about the socialism that's involved, which is not readily explained or made clear to
That's
most
a biblical
people.
concept. That's not, from each according to his ability and to each according to his need is a biblical construct. That's the first century church, the book of Acts.
Okay.
That's the way Peter and the members of the first church after Pentecost organized the church. And if you read the book of Acts, you will see that's what the church was. The people pooled all of their resources. That's not communism, that's biblical. The people pooled their resources to make sure that everybody ate and everybody had something in the community. That's also an African ideology as well.
Right.
The notion of I, me, mine, it's a Eurocentric concept.
Right.
All right?
Greed.
The communal way of living. People in warm temperate regions can better share than people in cold climates. You will fight for your fire if you're in that cave by yourself. Because if I know you got fire, I'm coming to get your fire because it's cold in my cave. And that mindset, that Eurocentric mindset out of the Caucasus Mountains, only the strong survive. You know, John Wayne said that the Indians, quote unquote, should have fought better. If they deserved to have it, they would have fought harder for it. So, you know, all of that, it goes back to the first century church. It goes back into Africa, communal living, because you're better protected amongst the group.
Right.
When the group is strong, the individual is stronger.
And you're so right in terms of the biblical underpinnings of socialism. And socialism and communism, from what I understand, are not the same. Socialism might be in communism.
Right.
Communism, the first thing and I'm not a student of it, but one of the first things that is indicative of communism is the non-belief in God.
Right.
Or supreme
Right,
being.
that's right, that's right, that's
And
right.
black people innately, by nature, we believe in the supreme being based on our culture. Now, people can say, how do you know by nature? Our whole cultural aspect is based on a supreme being. And regardless of what, quote, religion form it takes. And socialism, by being mixed with the propaganda of that communism and socialism are the same thing, makes us, many of us, back off from the whole concept of socialism. All the while, it is practiced within our group whenever there's, traditionally, whenever there's food, somebody coming over here, it doesn't have to be Christmas or Easter. Somebody in the neighborhood needs food. Your mom would send food to them.
Right.
My mom would do that. I said, Mom, why are you giving them, why are you doing that? You know? But that's our way.
Yeah.
And that's our
We
beautiful
share.
way.
We share.
But the play, The Most Dangerous Man
Right.
in America, which Amiri Baraka
Right, exactly.
was in the process of writing.
Remind people who he is.
And Amiri
Leroy Jones, people knew us
Yeah,
from
Leroy
that.
Jones.
Leroy Jones.
I mean, he was so prolific in his writings that,
And this is the last thing he wrote.
yes, and
Where he's
play.
passing.
Play. He has
The play.
tremendous numbers of essays that haven't reached the public yet. But Ted Wilson explained that Amiri identified himself closely with Du Bois from an intellect standpoint. And that's why he wrote this play, in order to speak to us about Du Bois, speak to black
Right.
people about Du Bois, get past the propaganda against Du Bois, get past our own dealings with the conflict between Du Bois and Garvey. And getting past that, you can begin to evaluate and respect each one mutually.
Right.
And when we do that, then we can take from one that which is good for us, take from the other that which is good for us, and keep on going.
All right, let's run this short piece from Woody King and Ted Wilson about the play. All right, and we'll be right back at you. Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. We have Woody here. Introduce yourself, Woody, and tell us a little bit about the play that we're about to interview.
Okay. I'm Woody King, and I'm the producer of New Federal Theater, and I'm the director of this play by Amiri Baraka called The Most Dangerous Man in America. And it is set in 1951 when the great scholar, activist, co-founder of the NAACP, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, was brought on trial for being an agent of a foreign government. And this play, Amiri had been working on for some time. And thank God we finally got it on. And we got it on, and with the help of many, many people. And one of the people that I think your audience might want to hear from is Ted Wilson, who is the associate producer of The Most Dangerous Man in America. And after that, I'll tell you where to get tickets and all of that.
Good afternoon, Winston. How are you? I came into this project because, having been close with Amiri for pretty much 50 years and associated with Woody about 30, 35 years, I've done a number of things, social things around Amiri celebrating milestone birthdays. And I was interested in what we were going to do for his 80th birthday. So, in talking to Woody, I knew that this play was being planned. And we talked about having it ready for the 80th birthday. Unfortunately, Amiri passed away before that. And there wasn't quite enough funding to do it at that time. Woody and I talked about it numerous times during that period, and he put together the Kickstarter program, which I became an intricate part of to help raise money for it. that's part of what I do. I raise money for arts programs. I did that for Mary for his 75th birthday when I did an anthology dedicated to him called Let Loose on the World. Also giving him an event at the Schomburg, and we presented him with the book.
Let's
Final words is come to see Most Dangerous Man in America at the Castillo Theater, 543 West 42nd Street by Amiri Baraka, his final play, and it is about Dr. W. Du Bois and how he was brought to trial at 83 for being a foreign agent in America.
That's Dr. Fulani's.
That's interesting. Now, I just saw that before I did the interview. But it's interesting, if you notice in the background, we had Emmett Till. You saw Emmett Till on the wall. Now, Emmett Till, all of us are born in 1941.
Yes.
So we all turned 14 the year Emmett Till was killed.
Yeah.
What was your take on Emmett Till when you're, Robert Muhammad?
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Robert Muhammad. I'm a legal assistant.
And you'll be 74 in October.
August,
August, right.
God willing.
So what happened when Emmett Till was murdered in Money, Mississippi?
I'm still hurt by that. That really devastated me, being like a little independent guy in Bed-Stuy. I couldn't fathom it. I still don't believe he whistled. And it's amazing you should ask. I keep collector item papers.
Yeah.
And I have the Muhammad Speaks and Final Call with his mother and the story on him.
You remember that picture of it in Jet magazine?
I got the jet.
You have the Jet?
I have the jet.
Still?
Sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I have quite a few pieces of information.
But he was our age. I mean,
Yes.
I couldn't, I mean, it just hit me so hard. I was in George Washington High School, me and Wayne Rice, and George Washington School was half and half. It was 50% white, 50% black. And we were clean. It was all dress, and, you know, we were the collegians wore a suit to school, high school every day. You remember those clean days? All right?
I've always, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I've always been admonished by my parents. See, it was mandatory that I went south in the summertime.
Ah, okay.
Because of my behavior.
Oh.
And those was big no-no. I had to either go to a reformatory or go down south.
Well, you were from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, they always misbehave in Brooklyn.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you. And we've always been told about the racial divide. You don't have nothing to say to them. You know, they don't acknowledge.
What part of the South?
I was in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
My goodness,
we
man.
never had a problem. And so I was affected by Emmett Till because of that.
Right.
And I told my brother, I said, listen, I don't believe it. I don't believe that he whistled. Because I know his parents admonished him on the same thing. This was common knowledge during the Jim Crow era.
Right.
Well,
If you were going south, you had information on what to do, what not to do, who not to be with, and how to get in and out of your own business.
Well, he was showing off to the kids on the outside. He was hanging out with his cousins and stuff. And he said, "Bye, baby." That's what the whole thing
Oh, he
was.
didn't whistle?
He didn't whistle. He said, "Bye, baby," to the woman in the store. And that was just completely out of line. He was showing all his friends a picture of the white girls he was going to school with in Chicago. So they thought he was crazy. So he said, "I bet you won't go in that store and say something to that woman." So it was a dare. So he went in there and said, got some candy, came back out and said, "Bye, baby." You don't do that in Money, Mississippi.
Today,
You don't do that today.
Today you get a problem.
You know? So knowing all that history, knowing the contrast between the North and the South, let's talk about how we all turned out. being black in America affect you in your 70s? I mean, we're all in our 70s now. Would you look at today and the kids and what they've become, and how is Du Bois affecting us as far as who are our heroes today? Reverend Sharpton seems to be the disciple of Martin Luther King, I call him. So, and of course, Farrakhan, which we're going to play the piece that you gave me.
Yeah, I just want to something that with the play at the Castillo Theater, Emmett Till, it's the 60th anniversary of his death and of his murder. And when you look at that, when I look at it, the context of today is validation of the horror that happened at that time. When you look at the type of murders that's going on on videotape of blacks, I mean, just plain outright shooting in the back, the choking to death, I can't breathe, and the guy is still choking them to death. In Oklahoma, they catch a guy who's supposedly distributing meth. He can't even run, and two guys are on him, police, and then the guy comes up, say, I'm going to taser him, pulls out the gun and shoots him. But he was saying in that clip, before he does that, the guy is saying, I can't breathe. He's saying, I can't breathe. And the guy says, F you.
It. Yeah.
Okay, what I'm saying is that this anniversary of Emmett Till is resurrecting to us, I feel, the fact that we're dealing with people who have no mercy, no pity. And that as black people are called on to repudiate someone in our group for doing something wayward, we have not called on them to repudiate the horrors that's going on in the various police departments around the country.
Interesting point.
And the 60th anniversary, and they're not going to repudiate, so, quote, what do black people do? What is the message coming through? So when you ask about black life in America, it is some of us can live, quote, seemingly better than the rest. But you know, and the rest of the panel knows, that we may have gone to college and gotten degrees and whatnot, but there are very bright brothers and sisters who we knew who didn't go for one reason or another. And that the fact that we did go at the time that we went was so circumstantial in terms of how it worked, how our mother got us in, how our father got us in. And when you look today as to blacks getting into City College, for example, the CUNY system, when that happened, tuition was free. Now they have shut the door down, and black people are the most bright, the most creative people on the planet, and can't get into school or diverted by Ritalin and the rest of this stuff. Our little children, our babies, the parents are being convinced to give their children, put their children on Ritalin for stupid money.
And they're being threatened. Women are being threatened that if they don't provide or consent, they'll be taken into, ACS will step in, and the child will be taken because they're not looking out for the welfare of the child. This is where knowledge, wisdom, and understanding are needed. This is where education becomes critical. We have a generation wherein, or generations now, where a lot of parents have not been educated. Single motherhood, detrimental, not only to the black community, but detrimental to black children. Women say they want to have a baby. Well, go buy a doll. These are children that need to be raised with a mother and father. A girl needs to know what a man is and how a man operates in order for her to choose a man later in life. She has to see that exemplified in the home. It's not about a woman wanting to have a baby and say, well, I can be the mother and father. No, you can't, any more than I can be a woman. or anybody else can think they can become a woman after they were born a man. So let's keep it real.
Right.
All right? So the children are being sacrificed in this system, and then women are being told that because their child is special ed, they're going to get a check from Social Security.
Right.
So women are pimping their own children for a check, and the children are not being educated. The pharmaceutical companies are making money. The mother is making a little bit of change that she's squandering on whatever she's squandering it on, and in the end result, we have a young black male who hasn't been educated. So this dynamic needs to stop. Parents need to, when I was the board chairman of a Head Start program for a few years, and I told the parents, your child's education is your responsibility, not the Board of Ed. It's your responsibility. You need to sit with your child every day and read with your child. Read to your child, read with your child. And if you haven't finished school, you need to be going back and get your GED or whatever it is while your child is here at the center. You need to be over at an adult program getting your GED and looking to go to college. Because your child, especially the boys, will be funneled off into this program of Ritalin, special ed, and all the nonsense. And we have to, we just have to stop this dynamic. It's killing our kids. And these boys are not stupid. I did a lecture at a special ed high school. They tell them they have attention deficit disorder, this, that, and the other. It was Martin Luther King Day. I started at 9:15 and finished at 11:30. Straight lecture, no videos, no graphics, no nothing. Straight 2.5-hour lecture. They didn't want to go to lunch. They said, they don't teach us anything.
Yeah. Sat still?
Now, not one boy got up to go to the bathroom. Nobody was disruptive.
Great.
No problem. 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes. They didn't want to go to lunch. And the principal had a fit. And I told him, I said, you're being victimized by the people in this school because they're getting paid a higher rate of pay than the teachers in regular school.
Exactly.
Well, all this is planned genocide. It always has been. We've always been set up to fail. Our self-esteem has always been attacked. That's why these plays and knowing our history and who we really are, we're parent people. We're the first ones here. We're the beginnings of humankind. I mean, if you don't get that injection of self-esteem, you fall down by the wayside. We'll go to Robert, and Robert has a fame of being... Well, you're the only one got caught. We all been doing drugs all these years, but you got caught.
I have a burning desire on his comment because the design of it was to dumb-size the educational system, then use the dumb-size female black students similar to a fish farm to bring in the babies.
Right.
At the same time, the psychotropic medication picked up.
Ooh. Ritalin.
Exactly. So in my legal experience, I've handled a few cases which led me to first examine Ritalin.
Whoa.
Ritalin is a particular psychotropic medication that have a time release component inside of it.
Is that what it is?
That causes agitation.
Oh.
So we call it a speedball because the outside of the Ritalin really calms you down. But inside, it becomes an adjutant. You know what I mean? To make you hyper and, you can't sit still. What sets it off in our adolescents and babies is lollipops.
Sugar.
Mike and Ike's.
Sugar.
The sugar.
Now and later.
Sugar.
Yes.
Wow.
So it's a psychological up of
No,
sugar?
it's an area of genocide where you take care of the entire bureaucratic design.
Right, okay.
You're seeing that the correction officers and those get paid.
Right.
Prisons is now the biggest commodity on Wall Street for those that can invest in it. And the children are guaranteed that the prisons will always be filled.
Right.
When I went to prison, there was 10 prisons in New York State. Now it's 73.
From 10 to 73?
Yes,
A 700% increase.
of course.
Oh. Now,
You
what
don't-
year did you first go in?
I went in early, like I think 56. I got
56.
introduced to this type of situation.
That comes from living in Brooklyn? I mean,
That comes from my behavior. That comes from I'm keeping it green for you.
You better back up. Where did you go to high school?
Wingate.
You went to Wingate. I went to Jefferson.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, they weren't that good.
But
To the gate.
on his point, on his point with the children,
yeah.
it's surgical skill. Now they're trying to give a vaccination in the placenta to cause feminization of young black youth.
Say that again?
The vaccination in the placenta causes the young black youth
To be
to be
effeminate.
effeminate. And if you don't take the vaccination, like you said, it's child abuse, and you're subject to lose your child.
Ooh,
Now,
we
what
gotta-
is the premise for giving the vaccination?
What's in the vaccination?
The vaccination is something called BPAS.
BPH? Oh, BPAS.
BPH
BPH.
dash
BPH.
A.
Dash A.
Yeah, it's put into the bottles. If you notice, your drinking water is now in a bottle almost like onion skin,
Yeah, very thin.
very thin, and it's known as leaching. The BPH is also
Right.
put into the plastic, and it goes right into your water.
And when the water is frozen, like you're not supposed to take water, freeze it in plastic containers because it'll leach the BPH. And it's not supposed to sit in the sun
Exactly.
because the heat will cause it to leach into the water. When you buy bottled water or any drink, now they will say on it that there's no BPH in it because they know that the BPH is detrimental to your health. The plastic. You see, the safest thing you could put water in is glass.
If I might just say this. The first children that was given a social promotion are now grandparents and great-grandparents. That means if I got left back in the 3rd grade, they put me in the 4th anyway, on and on. And now they are the grandparents, the great-grandparents. They're not in the process of all. Their children, we see what's happening with the children. They're killing each other. And the psychotropic medication is everywhere. It's in all the fast food.
I've heard that.
Oh, no, that's right and exact. It's in the fast food.
What are they putting in the fast food?
Psychotropic medication,
What mention one.
Ritalin, Prozac.
And in the food?
Yes.
Ritalin and Prozac in the food?
Don't you see the young girls, how agitated they are? They go off like a school of piranhas. That's not the bad part. The worst part is they're actually human blood and human cells put into the fast foods. And this gives your cellular and molecular structure a taste for blood and that type of viciousness. In other words, you are a cannibal physically, but it hasn't reached your psyche yet. But if you get aggressive, you go all the way. This is why we have so much community killing among ourselves. 35 people shot in Baltimore, 24 in Chicago last week. Nobody said a word. Nobody opened their mouth.
So the black and black crimes.
They're literally on a cannibalistic psychology, and the society implements it by giving them the drugs and giving them the weaponry.
How did you find all this out?
I do research because it's not, in this day and time that we live in, as opposed to Mr. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, they opened the door for us.
Right.
We should have enough courage to go out. And I attribute mine to the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
Had I not went to prison, I would have been a statistic, or I would have been a demon by now, like the other blacks.
So
who
you're
are there.
similar to Malcolm X?
Well, I got educated in prison.
And you went in 56?
In 56, I went to a reformatory.
But you were 15 years old.
I was, yeah. That's when I went in 1956 from Wingate.
What had you done?
I robbed a pawn shop.
A pawn
A
shop.
pawn shop.
How much money did you
He went
get?
to borrow.
I took the merchandise.
How much did you get?
I didn't take it. I gave it to a gang.
You gave it to a gang.
Yeah, Wingate was an all-white school in what they
okay.
call Pigtown, right behind Kings County.
So you robbed a pawn shop to give to a gang?
Yeah.
Was that your initiation?
No, that was to keep the brothers from getting beat up. See,
Okay.
we call here up south.
Yeah.
Up south. This is up south.
Right.
It's no difference than down south. They just use a little more psychology and a little more skill.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and eventually I got caught, and I went to a reformatory, and I was re-educated. It's the same today. On Rikers Island, it was just brought to my attention because I'm an advocate, that they have 7- and 8-year-old children
Yes.
in Rikers Island.
What?
Longer.
What?
This is nothing new.
It's just becoming known.
7 or 8?
That's
Years
been
old.
for more than 20 years. I know
Really?
that. We have 20 years ago. We had 8 and 9 years old in there for homicide.
God.
Yeah.
For homicide.
Man.
It's,
So how much
it's
time?
that long ago. This is nothing new.
How much time did you spend in prison total?
My
40
total
years?
time, about 15 years.
50,
I did
okay.
my last conviction when I went into law and prison advocacy. I did 10 years to the
Okay.
day. I went in 63. I came out in 73.
So you went in 56 and got out?
No, I went in 56. I went to reformatory.
Oh,
See, it's just like daycare, preschool, kindergarten, grade school, colleges.
The process.
And
It's
your
a bit-
your parents were around?
Single parent. My father died when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
But my mother, God bless her, she did all she could with us, me and my brother and sister. And she was like a Muslim to me, to us.
Okay.
We had restricted laws. We had don't do stuff in
That
my
was
house.
most black
I
parents
think
in those
every
days. That
my
was black
household was the
people.
same way.
That was black
Same
people.
way.
My
My
mother
mother
would
didn't play.
discipline you on the spot if you violated.
Yeah, well,
So
that was
we were
all of
very
us in
well
the 50s.
disciplined.
We all came up like that.
But the importance in what you brought up, I'm mesmerized because no one really speaks on the ACS situation. See, I've tried it. I couldn't find attorneys. I couldn't find other people.
There is a situation going on right now in ACS.
$2 billion industry, mind you.
The
I
federal
would say
government,
4.
the federal government is looking to pull the string on Head Start with ACS in New York City. I went to Congressman Ed Towns years ago and gave him information on the corruption in ACS, the fact that they're giving out money to agencies around the city that don't submit annual audits and haven't submitted audits in years. So I questioned a deputy commissioner of ACS. I said, well, if you are not getting an audit from the agencies, you have to submit an audit to the federal government. Therefore, the information you're giving the federal government is bogus. He said, well, as long as I don't go to jail, I don't care. Now, this was the deputy commissioner of ACS. I gave all that information to Congressman Ed Towns, met with him downtown Brooklyn. My whole board, we went because ACS was stealing money on the front end and the back end of the contracts for Head Start.
Oh.
It was siphoning money. And then they would take the money and it was going we don't know where.
Yeah.
All right. So Ed Towns initiated an audit on the city of New York. They came up with a report that was 57 pages long of violations of federal statutes with regard just to the Head Start program. But because they are a major grantee, they were getting $179 million for the program. They didn't pull all of the funding out, but what they did, they gave direct funding to the agencies around the city instead of giving it to the city of New York. So it cut the monies that they could play around with. But ACS right now is on the hot seat in Washington. New York's ACS is on the hot seat in Washington. So, and the mayor doesn't even take their phone calls because that agency is so nefarious and has been for so many years. It should be disbanded, should have been disbanded years ago. Giuliani put ACS or put Head Start under ACS when he was in office to help cover some things. See, but what you do in the dark will come out in the light. It'll take time, but truth will rise.
If I might, ACS and their abuse is parallel. Selling children, letting perverts and people similar to MAMBLA, Man Boys Love Association, letting them adopt children. Here's two gay men, black and white, living together, husband and wife. They're going to adopt a 9-year-old, 6-year-old black child. And we don't say anything. And it caused me to do research. I found out research best rewards the researcher if they're diligent in their research. I went to court out there at the end of Jamaica Avenue to help assist with some people to get their child back, and I ran into a brick wall. I thought getting records out in federal court was difficult. ACS is locked down. And I received some bad threats, but it just caused me to do research. ACS goes back, the parent was active in Mr. Du Bois' time. They were dealing in outright eugenics then.
Yeah.
See?
That's a program.
They were, that's the godfather of them.
We've done a lot of shows on ACS. I think one of the first shows I did here, 17, 18 years ago, when I first started M&M, was I was so upset about ACS and how they were snatching kids. I mean, I was livid. But what we want to do is talk about how you get out of all this. And you're the prime example, Brother Robert, how Minister Farrakhan saved your soul.
My life.
Your life.
My life.
And then we'll show a sermon of Minister Farrakhan preaching in a Baptist church.
Excellent.
And what is the title of it?
We Must Have Unity. And this was a presentation at a church in Chicago, May 24. And what surprises many people is that Minister Farrakhan speaking in a church, but he speaks in more churches than he does in mosques around the country, as quiet as it's kept. You notice that Minister Farrakhan, you don't see him on CNN, you don't see him on, that's a whiteout of Minister Farrakhan, which we have no problem with. But when black people don't see one of their people, they have to go look for him. You know, what's happening with Farrakhan, they got to go look, get the Final Call newspaper, read it, get the different DVDs, which speak for themselves. So this one here is, you can go look at this on 127th Street at Malcolm X Boulevard. There's a brother Joe who has a table right there. He's outside vendor, one of the nicest guys you can meet. Also, someone saved from the grassroots. Put it that way. He speaks for himself. But play the clip.
I wanted to, maybe we'll run Minister Farrakhan first, and then Robert, you can tell us how he saved your life.
Excellent.
If I, you mentioned W.E.B. Du Bois earlier. I want to just jump back to it for a few seconds, and how he was brought up on charges. You know who Springard was?
Springard, yeah.
He was working for the FBI.
Yes.
Springard, they have this award, and I don't know why they still even have a Springard medal. These people don't make no sense.
He was in the play.
Springard was right there with Du Bois, feeding information to the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
You see? And I don't even know why they even give a Springard medal.
Well, that's in the play. They have a Springard in the play. So you have to go see the play, and you'll see all that stuff at the Castillo.
Dr. Fulani
Theater.
Lenore Flunny.
All right, so just run the piece on Farragut. Now, you got to hear this. You know, we got 2 Christians and 2 Muslims here, and we're talking about
we all
unity.
believers.
And we got Farrakhan preaching in a Baptist church.
We all are
All right?
Christians. We all are Christians, and we all are Muslims.
We all believe in God, for sure.
We believers.
Amen.
About their perception of one man, Jesus. And sometimes their perceptions varied because we're human beings. And we can look at a thing and see it our way, and another can look at the same thing and see it their way, and sometimes we differ in perception. But John, in the book of John, questions are asked and questions are answered. Jesus asked, "Who do they say I am?" Well, evidently, if he was telling them who he was, he wouldn't have to ask the question. Well, they say you're that prophet that was to come. You're this or you're that. He didn't answer. He said, well, disciples, who do you say I am? Now, when a man works among you, but does not tell you who he is, then when you consider his works will testify of him. So when Peter answered, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Now, Jesus knew that Peter was saying it right, but he didn't want it known yet. Hush, Peter, because I have not yet ascended. Because he didn't become Christ in his earthly ministry. He was Christ when he was risen, and then was at the right hand of the Father. Listen to me good. And from that position, he guided his disciples, and they became apostles. Who do they say I am? Now, while Christ was on earth, he had a rough time. You know, it's easy to follow him now, because you weren't living in ancient Rome. He had enemies that hated him because he realized that the synagogue was full of hypocrites. My. And he said they were like whited sepulchres, but in them were the bones of dead men. Now, the songs were unifying. The songs showed the beauty of this choir. They were singing together. They were in tune, and they were full of the Spirit. But after the song is done, after the word is preached, what do you go back home to? Who are you when you leave this house? Are you really a Christian? The cross around your neck don't make you a Christian. praising his name is a good start in the right direction. But if that's all you do is praise his name but won't live the life they taught, then you're in need of further teaching.
So I just picked a short excerpt. Now here we're talking about Muslim preaching in a Baptist church. We have 2 Muslims here and 2 Christians here, and we're all black. Jesus was a black Jew. And,
He was an Israelite, he wasn't a Jew.
Or Israelite, Hebrew. Actually, he was a black Hebrew.
Hebrew is a language.
Hebrew
is a language.
Israelite or?
He was an Israelite.
Either way, he was a black man, right? That we agree on.
Right.
All right. So now, how do you explain ISIS and the Muslims of the news today?
ISIS, when you go into Google, you go into Google, for those who are familiar with the internet, it's a search engine.
Right.
For those who are not familiar, it's a search engine. You have a
Right.
computer. If you don't have a computer, you tell your daughter to do the following. Go into Google, put in who created ISIS.
9/11, I
And
say.
here comes Britain, America,
Right.
Israel is involved. They were trained in Jordan. And there was a guy on Coast to Coast a couple of weeks ago. He said, look, he said, you see ISIS taking over territory in Iraq. He said, that's just a feint move to make you think that they're all powerful. He said, the real target is Syria. You notice that they took over the city in Iraq, and then there was right behind that, they have taken over 2 major cities in Syria. But that's the feint to make it look. He said the Iraqi parliament is going crazy trying to get information out to the public that they have seen American helicopters delivering or resupplying ISIS. Now, this
Say
is what
again?
American helicopters resupplying ISIS.
Were those captured and doing the?
What, the helicopters?
Yeah.
No, they're American helicopters. ISIS ain't flying no helicopters yet. I mean, they'll go into Syria and confiscate something. But I'm telling you, I don't know. I'm not over there, but in the interest of finding out what's going on, and also look, Hezbollah, and I'll conclude with this. Hezbollah is a creation of Israel. They created Hezbollah in order to set up a opposition to Arafat, the PLO.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so that's they set up, and the same thing is going on in the black community.
Right.
Right here in New York, there's a group that comes out talking against the Nation of Islam in a provocative way on 125th Street. When you stop and listen, you say, well, wait a minute, what is these guys' program? What is their agenda? Is it only downing the Nation of Islam? Then we out here trying to get our people, raise up
These
our
are the
people's
Muslims.
consciousness. No,
These
no,
are
no,
the
no,
Muslims?
no. I'm not going to name people who are out there. No. The fact of the matter is, the enemy of Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam cannot come at us directly. So what they do is pay a surrogate. They finance a surrogate to come and provoke something, and folks who did not live during the COINTELPRO period, 60s and 70s, they don't know. They just see somebody provoking something. They want to do something. But hold it, brother. Don't. Those are agents. They're paid.
Right.
They are bona fide because you say, how is your only program downing the nation? Okay? So the fact of the matter is, when you see that kind of thing, that raises a question as to where they're getting their financing from, because there are 2 major books that Minister Farrakhan or the Nation of Islam produced, and that is The Secret Relationship of Blacks and Jews, which is taken directly from the research done by Jewish scholars, word for word, in 2 different books.
Okay.
They don't like that. So they can't come at Minister Farrakhan, the nation direct, because all that would do is endear Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, endear the black population to the nation. So they don't come that way. They use Negroes who are paid and financed to do what they can't do. That's the deal that's going on. But listen, on June 20th, there's a major event. I happen to be blessed to be part of a coalition that's called the Coalition of Muslims pre-1975. In 1975, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad left, and there are various communities that began to split off from what was the Nation of Islam. Still brothers and sisters, but the only time that they would get together is at a janazah or Muslim funeral. So it's always been my experience at these funerals, brothers say, man, you need to get us together in a big event. Well, it happened. I wasn't the cause of it. It happened in 2006. A sister named Sister Farja Muhammad gave a event called Soldiers Left Standing. And that was a grand reunion of Muslims from all the way back to the 50s and so on. But now, on June 20th, at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, there will be the salute to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And this goes to your question about, hey, you got 2 Christians here and 2 Muslims here. What the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did primarily was instill in the Nation of Islam, instill in those who came to the meetings, to the Muslim meetings, whether they became a Muslim or not, is he instilled in us a love for our people. And that's why you see the brothers out on the corner, quote, with the final call. There ain't no money in that. It's getting the word to our people. And our people still caught up in the propaganda, just passed the brothers by. They don't even know what's in the paper. This paper here, Chirac, is talking about Spike Lee doing a movie about the torture in Chicago. And they're upset in Chicago about that. But anyway, that's the final call. You won't find it in any other paper. But June 20th, the Borough of Manhattan Community College, it's a free event. It's open to Muslims from way back, Muslims in the present, 5%ers, friends, family, those people who didn't come into the nation but know that it helped somebody in their family. It's going to be at 5:30 to 8 p.m., and it's going to be a grand reunion of those Muslims. What is the value and the importance of that?
15 seconds.
Is that the Muslims, when the Muslims unite in any endeavor, it's going to cause an example to occur with Baptists, Masons, and fraternities.
Thank you for coming. The Gilchrist Experience. The God in me loves the God in you. Take care. See you next week. God bless.
Thank you, Brother Gil.
Thank you.